Thank you.
Well, I've now, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Castle Morpeth Area Local Council meeting this afternoon, Monday the 8th of February. This meeting is being held virtually and it's also being live streamed on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Northumberland TV. To help with the smooth running of this meeting, the online meeting, all members have received a copy of the procedure to follow, which is page 7 in the committee papers. And I would just ask that all participants in the meeting to please follow that guidance. Members are asked to keep their microphones on mute unless invited to speak by the chair, and to raise their hand if they do wish to speak. And can I also remind members and officers just to turn off their mobile phones during the meeting. Thank you. In line with changes to the public speaking protocol for virtual meetings, written representations will be read out by an officer at the appropriate point at this meeting. And if any member does experience technical difficulties, we do have Michelle Williams online to give help. Can I now ask the legal officer, and I believe it's Danielle, to ask each member of the committee to confirm their presence. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just read out members' names in order. If you could unmute and confirm you're present and then put yourself on mute again. Thank you. Councillor Bourne.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Bainan.
Present.
Councillor Dickinson. Can't see anywhere. Councillor Dodd.
Present, but you've missed Councillor Armstrong.
Oops, sorry, apologies. Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn.
Present.
Councillor Foster.
Received apologies from Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Leslie. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jones.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Ledger.
I've received apologies from Councillor Ledger.
Okay. Councillor Sanderson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Towns. And Councillor Wearmouth.
I've received apologies from Councillor Wearmouth.
Okay, thanks, Leslie.
Okay, thank you. So we have apologies from Councillor Wearmouth, Foster and Ledger. Thank you. Okay, if we move on to agenda item 3, and that's the minutes of the previous meeting. This is the meeting that was held on Monday, the 11th of January, and members have all received those minutes. Can I ask someone to move that they are a correct record?
Agree.
Councillor Dodd, yeah. And a seconder. Councillor Towns. Just a show of hands to say that we all agree to that. Thank you. So those minutes are confirmed as a true record of the last meeting. We'll move on to agenda item 4, and that's disclosure of members' interests. And at this point, I'll ask if any member wishes to disclose an interest in any of the items on the agenda today. I can see several hands up. Councillor Bainan, Councillor Bourne, Councillor Armstrong.
Thanks, Chair. I'm a member of the governing board of Netherton Park, so I'll declare an interest and advise whether it's best to leave the meeting on that one or do just to declare an interest. So if I could
Okay.
advice on that, please.
At this point, I'll just say the same, Councillor Bainan. I'm a member of the Netherton Park governing body, and so I'm disclosing an interest in item 6 on the agenda. I intend to take no part in the proceedings for that application and will withdraw from the meeting while it's considered. I've got Councillor Bourne with his hand up.
Thank you, Chair.
I'd like to declare personal prejudicial interest in item 7, the land southeast of the drift. The applicant is a client of my firm, and therefore I'll be declaring interest in leaving the meeting during that item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bourne. And Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to declare an interest in as a governing body of Neverton Park, and I don't think it would be prudent to stay in the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Right, well, before we move on to agenda item 5, and that's the determination of planning applications. Can I just say that this committee has been asked to determine 3 applications this afternoon using the delegated powers set out on the papers at page 15. And before we move on to the actual applications, seeing as agenda item 6 is the Netherton Park one, can I just ask, it will be necessary for the members who will be remaining in session to hear that application. Are you happy to nominate a chair to take that application forward? Anyone want to put themselves forward? Seeing as myself and the Vice Chair, who was Councillor Armstrong, will be leaving the meeting. Anyone want to put themselves forward, please? Councillor Bourne?
Well, no one else. Well, I'll force myself. Okay. Yes, I'll do it if no one else wants to volunteer. Thank you, Chair.
Would everybody be in agreement with that, please?
No.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Bourne.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, so at this point, I will hand over to Councillor Bourne, who will take over for that particular application. Those members who have declared an interest will now leave the meeting at this point and will come back in when that particular item has been concluded.
Right.
So I'll hand over to Councillor Bourne.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And can we make sure we message those councillors once we're done so they can come back in? So I'll see you again shortly. Actually, you won't, because I'll be going out for that one. But anyway, right. Okay, are those members left the meeting that we're intending to? Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Baden, are you still? Gone. Okay, right. We'll move on then.
Sorry, Chair.
Okay.
I was trying to get in there before, but got distracted. I'm also going to have to declare an interest in this and leave this discussion.
Oh, right, fair enough. Is it? Are we forward? Is it enough left? Okay, thanks, David. So if you, I will let you know when you can come back. Okay, if you just, let's if those members would like to leave the meeting. I think Councillor Armstrong, I think you were going to leave. Are you still here? Oh, you gone?
I think it's actually as long as they have turned the camera off and
Oh,
their
right.
microphone off and actually take no part, they don't physically have to leave.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just sometimes it's easier than just doing that in case they have trouble joining again.
That's absolutely fine. Okay, well, we'll proceed on that basis. Right, well, we'll move on then to item 6 on the agenda, which is the planning application. Well, firstly 5 and then 6, termination of planning applications. As the chair has already said, the procedure's already been circulated. I think we're familiar with that now. So we'll go straight on to the first application, number 6, which is 20/02069/REM. And who's going to be presenting on this one?
That would be myself,
Okay.
Chair.
Would you take it away?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen so you can see the presentation.
It's not there yet. Is it? Oh, there we go. Right, okay, great.
Okay, right, we'll just begin that. Right, can everybody see that okay, and can everybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Yes.
you.
Right, okay. Okay, right, okay, I'll just begin with some updates to the officer report that you have. First of all, by way of update, we've had one further representation in respect of the application. That's a letter of support from the Netherton Parks trustees, who are the freehold owner of the application site. And they've advised that they're supporting the application on the grounds that the development will deliver benefits both locally and within the county. Secondly, by way of updates, there is a minor change to the wording of the officer recommendation in the report. There's reference in that recommendation to space for shorebirds in connection with the council's ecology coastal mitigation service. That reference to space for shorebirds should be removed, so that the recommendation does now just refer to ecology coastal mitigation. And then finally, in terms of updates, as officers, we are proposing one additional condition to those that are in your report already. Were you to be minded to support the application. This additional condition relates to construction method statement matters, and seeks to address some issues that have been raised by Stannington Parish Council in their sort of statement on this item, which will be read out sort of shortly. The condition just seeks to build on an existing condition that's already in the outline planning permission around construction method statement issues, to include some matters that weren't covered in the outline planning permission condition. So basically, I'll just read out the wording of the new condition that's proposed. It reads as follows: the construction method statement to be submitted for approval under condition 16 of outline planning permission 19//01241/Fairyco shall, in addition to the matters already referenced in that condition, also include details in respect of construction delivery vehicle and construction hours, construction vehicle routes to the site to and from the A1, and signage for construction vehicles. So an additional condition there by way of updates. So just moving on now to the main presentation itself. You have on your screen there a location plan showing the location of the application site. The site comprises a mix of previously developed and undeveloped land at Netherton Park, between Stannington Village and Stannington Station. The majority of the site was formerly occupied as a children's home that has since consolidated onto the adjacent Kylo House site, which I'm just pointing to now, the existing children's home on the Kylo House site, just to the immediate southwest of the application site, which occupies this area at the eastern and northern end of the Netherton Park site, also this pocket of land here at the western end of the drive. Just by way of background again, just some other slides, an existing site layout for you there, an aerial view of the site, and again another aerial view which just gives you a slightly wider context. You can see where Netherton Park sits in between Stannington Village, Stannington Station to the north, and just to the east of the A1. And just some photographs of the site. This is a view of the main access into the Netherton Park site from the old A1. So if you stood in the Netherton Park site here looking towards the A1, so that's the existing access that would be improved as part of the proposed development. Then you have a view now looking into the reserved matters, well, looking towards the reserved matters site. On the right hand side, you've got the entrance into Kylo House. The line of trees you can see here in the photograph, that's the southern side of the drive. As you come into the site, the entrance to the drive is just off the photograph to the left. Again, there are some former children's home buildings on the application site that are earmarked for demolition as part of the proposals. These are just some photographs of those existing buildings. So a couple of examples there, and just on following slides, again, some examples of buildings earmarked for demolition within the site, and there's one final photograph there of another of the existing buildings earmarked for demolition. Just some photographs now of the other boundaries to the site. Now this is the western boundary of the Netherton Park site. So here you have the entrance into the drive, and then you have this further access track that runs up the western side of the site. Then a few next of the northern boundary of the site, where you have a hedgerow at present, existing commercial buildings beyond that to the western side of Netherton Park. And then another photograph, this time showing the eastern boundary of the application site. On the right hand side here you have the East Coast main line. You probably see the overhead sort of cables. And there's another track that runs down the eastern side of the site with tree planting to the other side of that. And then just another photograph here. This is taken from within the drive itself. So looking in a westerly direction down the drive. So you can see the drive with the trees on either side of the drive, existing properties on the northern side of the drive itself. So just some photographs and slides there just by way of context. Again, these are some examples of other existing properties within the Netherton Park area, sort of to the immediate north of the drive. Okay, so just coming on to the proposals themselves. The current application that's before you this afternoon is an application for reserved matters approval in respect of details of layout, appearance, scale and landscaping. The principle of up to 85 dwellings on the site and the details of access to the site from the old A1 have already been agreed through outline permissions that were granted in July 2017 and July 2019. So you've got a slide there of the illustrative master plan from the outline permission, and then another slide which shows the access details that were approved as part of the most recent outline planning permission in July 2019. Those approve the access details up to the western end of the drive, which I'm just pointing to sort of now. So in terms of the reserved matters details themselves, just to briefly run through those, you've got the proposed site layout there. I'll just move on to another submitted drawing, which is the landscape master plan, which just shows you the reserved matters proposals, the detailed proposals for the site and in their sort of landscape sort of context. As per the outline planning permission, the reserved matters application is for 85 dwellings. Those are largely 2 stories in height, although 4 of the dwellings would be 2.5 stories. It's a mix of 2, 3, 4 and 5 bed sort of units. The proposed layout includes 3 new open space areas. There's an open space area at the eastern end of the drive, which incorporates an area of existing tree planting. A larger open space area in the southeast corner of the site, which would include a multi-use games area and also a suds drainage basin. as well as additional tree planting. Then the third main open space area, which is a landscaped bund, which runs along the eastern boundary of the site adjacent to the East Coast Main Line. That would be up to 3 metres in height, with a 3 metre high acoustic fence to the top of it, to address noise issues in terms of rail noise from the railway line. Landscaping, just carry on with yeah, it's just some examples of the house types that are proposed on the site. We'll just run through these just to give you a flavour of the dwelling designs that are proposed. As I say, all 2-storey dwellings in the main, apart from 4 plots where 2.5-storey dwellings are proposed. That's the 2.5-storey unit there. It's proposed on 4 of the plots. To put the slides to move on, just an idea there of street scenes, just looking north, south, and then east, west. You've got the mounded area there shown on the east-west street scene, just to give you an idea of the scale of that in relation to the proposed dwellings. In terms of landscaping, you've got a plan here which shows basically proposals in respect of existing trees within the site. The red areas show areas of existing tree planting that would be removed to accommodate the proposed development. Other areas of existing planting would be retained. That includes existing tree planting along the southern boundary of the site. The tree planted area I mentioned before in terms of that first open space area at the eastern end of the drive. An existing hedgerow along the south of the drive would be retained, and it's also proposed to retain some existing trees to the front of existing houses on the north of the drive. Other trees either side of the drive are proposed for removal in order to accommodate the main site access. There are some improvements. I just go back to the landscape master plan. There are some improvements proposed to the access road that runs around the western, northern and eastern edges of the site, notably improvements to the northern part of this access track and parts of the western side of the access track here. However, it's not intended that this existing access track will be utilised as an access route in and out of the housing development. It's substandard at the moment in terms of width. You've got a 90-degree turn here, which has limited visibility, and therefore, while some improvements are proposed to this of access, it's not proposed to resurface it entirely in this corner here. And it's also proposed up in the northwest corner there will be a grasscrete area to give the appearance of a grassed verge. The access needs to be maintained to allow access for a farm and some dog boarding kennels. To the southeast of the site, access needs to be maintained for those existing users, but the main access to the development itself would be via the drive to the south. There are no affordable units as part of the proposed layout. The Section 106 agreement that runs alongside the outline planning permission provides instead for 30% of the sale proceeds from the site to be paid to the County Council for us to spend on new build and renovation works within Northumberland to provide children's home accommodation. The applicant has, however, agreed to enter into a unilateral undertaking to contribute £26,095 to the Council's Ecology Coastal Mitigation scheme. So just coming briefly back to your report, as I said earlier, no changes to consultee or neighbour responses other than that further letter of support I mentioned from the Netherton Park trustees. You note from your report that there are objections to the application from Stanleyton Parish Council, the Netherton Park Residents Association, and around 30 members of the public. The reasons for objection are as detailed in your report. Just very briefly in terms of key issues, just running through the key issues. As I say, the principle of up to 85 dwellings on the site has already been agreed as part of the outline permission, as have the detailed access arrangements from the ODA1 into the site. The proposals are considered to be acceptable in terms of their impact on the openness and visual amenities of the green belt. In terms of landscape character, officers are of the view that Netherton Park does have quite a varied character. You do have areas of soft landscape character around the drive and around the edges of the site, but the other parts of the site, such as this area in the northwest and Kylo House, which have a more built development sort of character. As I've said, there is substantial tree removal proposed as part of the proposals for the site. However, substantial new replacement planting is proposed as well, and it is proposed to retain large amounts of tree and hedge planting that exist at present also. In terms of the drive, yes, the loss of existing trees on the drive is regrettable, but the loss of those trees is considered necessary in order to accommodate an access road that meets the standards required by our sort of highways team in order to access the development. Notwithstanding that, there have been some changes made to the submission since it was first received to try and address the impacts on the drive. So the number of new dwellings has been reduced from 9 to 5. It's now proposed, as I say, to retain some of the trees along the northern side of the drive, as well as the hedgerow to the sort of south of the drive. And there is a condition proposed for some compensatory tree planting within the grounds of Kylo House to the south of the existing hedgerow on the drive, which will compensate to an extent for the trees lost on the southern side of the drive. The proposed housing layout is considered acceptable by officers in design terms. There are satisfactory separation distances between both existing and proposed sort of dwellings. Issues that had been raised by Kylo House around the security of their existing facility have been resolved through changes to the layout of the proposed dwellings in the southwest corner of the site. You'll note from your officer report that there is an objection from our public protection team on noise grounds. That carries forward the objection that they raised at outline stage. As your report says, when the application was considered by a strategic planning committee some years ago at outline stage, it was decided that the planning permission should be granted, albeit subject to some conditions around noise mitigation matters. The applicant has submitted detailed proposals around noise mitigation, which are considered to address the conditions that were attached to the outline planning permission. The applicant's noise assessment work has been independently verified by a noise consultant that was appointed by the council to look at both the views of public protection and the proposals of the applicant's noise consultant. So in terms of noise, the proposals are considered to be acceptable, notwithstanding the objection from the council's public protection team. Highways raised no objections to the proposed layout, nor do Ecology or Natural England in terms of ecology matters, subject to the unilateral undertaking that I've mentioned. And there are no objections from consultees in terms of contamination, ground conditions, drainage, flood risk and ecology. So therefore, just coming to the recommendation, just to finish, as I say, the recommendation is, as per that in your report, that reserved matters approval is granted, subject to a unilateral undertaking being entered into by the applicant regarding ecology coastal mitigation, and subject to the conditions in your report, plus the additional condition around construction method statement matters that I read out earlier. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jeff. Right, do we have any speakers on this one?
Yes, Chair, we do. We have objector speech, we have a parish council and also supporters. So it's going to be Richard that reads the objector. I will read the parish council and Ryan and Tamsin will be reading the supporter.
Okay, great. Okay, well, take it away then. Thanks.
Yes, can everyone hear me? This is the representation from Netherton Park Residents Association, the NPRA. The NPRA is fundamentally opposed to the development while substantive concerns regarding safety and access remain unresolved. These and other concerns are understated in the Senior Planning Officer's report. We firmly believe that better access arrangements are essential and in the interests of everyone, including the applicant. In August and the 2nd of November 2020, the NPRA submitted detailed objections. While some regarding the drive have been addressed, substantive access and safety issues have been dismissed by the planning officer on the basis that the details of access to the site from the old A1 have already been approved through the granting of outline plan permission. We understand that this is technically correct, but respectfully suggest that this should be revisited to ensure proper due diligence has been undertaken in respect of safety and access. There is an opportunity here to intervene before serious error is made. In context, in 2014, NCC granted outline permission for a 5.5 metre access road and a 2 metre pathway. A letter on record from 4 Consulting stated that this met NCC and national policy standards, was appropriate to the scale of development, reasonable and did not compromise safe and free flow of traffic. In 2019, a letter from 4 Consulting stated an alternative view that, for reasons that were not made explicit, a revised layout to a 4.8 metre access road and a 1.5 metre pathway existing road layout represented a safe and appropriate form of access for development of this scale. The Highway Authority accepts this as a suboptimal and contrary to internal standards and national guidelines, but its opinion is that its shortcomings are justifiable. Approval of the revised arrangements was consequently taken under delegated powers. Part of the rationale stated it was transpired that insufficient land was available to implement the original plans. Questions this raises: was this such a major decision taken under delegated powers rather than full scrutiny by committee? How did the applicant originally intend to widen the road? Why was insufficient land available in 2019? Is this simply a cost issue? What efforts were made between 2014 and 2019 to secure additional land? If the 2014 proposal was appropriate, how can the compromise be appropriate now? Is this therefore a post hoc decision made through necessity rather than reason based on an error in 2014? Would the decision have been taken on this basis in 2014? Other issues. Our measurement suggests that access road currently has a lower mean width, excluding the 2 passing places, between 4.6 metres and 4.7 metres, and is 4.5 metres wide at its narrowest over a 200 metre length. The proposal was justified and appropriate to a development of 85 dwellings, but this ignores the traffic volume associated with existing residences, the commercial centre, Kylo House, the farm and kennels at the east of development, and significant increases in delivery van traffic. The access road is actually narrower than the roads within the proposed development. Arrangements at the eastern end of the access road to facilitate traffic movement and safety at the area of the entrances to Kylo House and the drive involve a sharp bend, poor visibility, irrespective of proposed tree reduction, and are inadequate to safety cope with the likely volume of traffic at key times in that area. Safety issues remain with blind accesses from the exits from the business centre, 1 to 4 farm cottages, and the lane 5 to 8 high farm cottages. Contrary to justification that there are no frontage accesses on the access road, 1 Netherton Farm cottages, residential, and the equestrian centre exit directly onto the access road with limited visibility. Users currently travel at excessive speed along the access road. Cyclists and pedestrians, certain to increase in volume if the development goes ahead, have not been adequately considered. Arrangements for crossing at the western end and accessing the Great North Road are vague. Speed restrictions and traffic calming measures are not factored into this proposal. Implications. A suboptimal by NCC and national guidelines, dangerous road and pathway arrangement will exist. The safety of all users will be seriously compromised. Cyclists and pedestrians will be at particular risk given anticipated growth in usage. And finally, we request that the Council defer the decision to allow the issues highlighted above and in our previous statement of objection to be revisited and investigated to ensure the safety of the community at Netherton Park. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for reading that, Richard. Okay, next we have Leslie's going to read the Parish Council, is it?
Yes, that's right, Chair. This is Stannerton Parish Council statement. Stannerton Parish Council objected to the development in July 2014. Most of the original objections have been dealt with in the intervening 6 years. Nonetheless, in 2021, there are still some outstanding objections. Need for traffic calming and road marking from 2014. Appropriate footpaths from the old A1 oblique Great North Road from 2014. And access arrangements for current properties and back lane left unmade from 2014. Number 1, access arrangements 2021. Stannerton Parish Council supports the current major objections of the Netherton Park Residents Association regarding access arrangements. The original proposal for the access road included removal of the hedgerow on the northern side of the carriageway, provision of a 5.5 metre carriageway as required by NCC standards for an access road, provision of a 2 metre footway on the southern side of the carriageway, an improved pedestrian crossing facility at the western end of the scheme to provide better pedestrian connectivity. In the Strategic Planning Committee report of November the 3rd, 2015, the Planning Officer stated that NPRA concerns regarding inadequate road and pedestrian access had been largely met by inter alia footpaths and pedestrian safety, widening of the access road to the necessary standards. However, in 2019, NCC changed these key access arrangements and in so doing accepted they were suboptimal. The reasons for the changes were not made clear, other than a statement that insufficient land was available to implement the original plans. Although the original application was taken to the North Area Planning Committee and then to the Strategic Planning Committee because it was a large-scale major planning application, subsequent decisions to remove or downgrade the access arrangements were taken under delegated powers. Stannerton Parish Council questions the appropriateness of such a major change impacting safety and access being made by delegated powers, and why the original access commitments which met local and national guidelines and which do not seem onerous are not being implemented. Stannerton Parish Council believe that planning approval would not have been granted in 2014 on that basis. These changes, if introduced, compromise the safety of all road users, particularly pedestrians and cyclists. Irrespective of approval decisions already made, 7.50 in the report, Stannerton Parish Council asks the committee to examine the detailed NPRA submissions in October and November 2020 and defer the decision on the basis of safety and process, and suggest that the senior planning officer and applicant look again at the access arrangements to prevent a suboptimal decision with serious potential consequences being implemented. 2. The drive. There have been a number of changes made to how this tree-lined avenue will be impacted by the development, and Stannerton Parish Council strongly regrets any loss of mature trees and hedges and requests that immediate TPOs be implemented, as well as a request for planning site visit. Although the reintroduction of new trees and hedges would be welcome, councillors ask for greater detail on the process and request that residents are consulted on and included in the decision-making processes. Stannerton Parish Council share NPRA concerns regarding the access arrangements as currently planned at the corner of Kylo entrance to the drive, and suggest this be looked at again as part of the wider access issues. Number 3, other issues. Arrangements for the access track that skirts the west, north and east of the site, 7.51, in the report are unclear. Road safety on this western route is an issue with 3 blind/nearly blind exits and the prospect of new residents using it as a shortcut. Bellway's solution is to leave part of the track unsurfaced as a deterrent. Ongoing maintenance of the private roads and authorised user categorism is vague. Stannington Parish Council ask for more consideration of why Bellway is not taking full responsibility for the ongoing maintenance of the road, the appropriateness of leaving a small piece of road unsurfaced, what other measures may be implemented for new residents to prevent them from taking a shortcut, the introduction of traffic calming and safety measures at the exits from the business centre, 1 to 4 farm cottages and the lane to access 5 to 8 high farm cottages, clarity on road ownership, maintenance and user categories. The submission of a construction method statement is welcome, but councillors specifically ask that it address the build timeframe and phasing components, how Bellway addresses residents' concerns over noise, dirt and its potential impact on vehicles and properties, what it proposes for the upkeep of the access road, which is already in a poor state of repair, how construction site traffic will be managed, security arrangements, speed restrictions during construction. Stannington Parish Council thanks the Planning Committee for their attention and consideration in all of these matters.
Okay, thank you very much. And we've got some letters from, or presentations from supporters. And Ryan's going to do that one. Yep.
Yes, that's correct. So this is a support comment from Bellway Homes as the applicant. Bellway Homes welcomes the officer recommendation to approve the reserve matters application for the redevelopment of land at Netherton Park. The principle of redevelopment has been established through the granting of the varied outline planning permission for the site. It is a planning commitment which contributes to the housing requirements in the council's emerging local plan, and the redevelopment will help meet delivery targets. The proposed scheme will effectively and efficiently utilise previously developed land and remove vacant buildings which have been the subject of metal theft and antisocial behaviour. The detailed proposals for the site have evolved through the application determination period, as we have looked to respond to and accommodate consultee comments on the application. Various amendments have been made to the submitted application proposals, including reducing the number of homes proposed on the drive from 9 to 5 and amending house types to better reflect the character of the road, providing replacement tree planting on the north side of the drive and on land to the south of the road at Kylo House, redesigning the layout for 10 homes in the area of the site to the east of Kylo House to respond to safeguarding considerations for the resident children, providing additional on-site landscaping and ensuring the planting mix has ecological and landscape benefits, revising the internal road layout and parking provision to meet council standards, and introducing a drainage swale in the southern part of the site. Overall, it is considered that the proposed scheme responds effectively to the constraints and opportunities of the site and will deliver a high quality redevelopment. We note that there have been some objections raised regarding the adopted access road to the site from the old Great North Road. However, the arrangement was considered and approved by the council as part of a varied outline planning permission for the site. Therefore, the reserve matters application has been prepared to reflect and incorporate these approved amendments. Bellway Homes respectively request that members support the officer recommendation and resolve to approve the application.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all the speakers, I think. So,
Excuse me, Chair. No, there is.
Yes.
Yeah, we do have one more.
Oh, one more. Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So I'm speaking in support of the trustees of the Netherton Park Trust. Okay. So the trustees of the Netherton Park Trust, who own the site subject to this application and are the lessors of Kylo House to the council, wish to make the following observations to the committee. The Netherton Park Trust is the charity that has worked amicably with Northumberland County Council over many years in the management of the children's homes at Netherton Park. The trustees share some responsibility for the management of the homes through the instrument of management. 2 trustees are foundation managers on the board of the governors, and the other local authority managers being county councillors. And since the closure of the open units, the board's focus now relates to Kylo House. The proposed redevelopment will realise funds for the creation of new children's homes and or moving on accommodation for young people in Northumberland. Agreement has already been reached with the council about this through contribution agreement dated the 7th of July 2017. And out of the remaining proceeds, the trustees will be in an even better position to consider providing further funds for the benefit of disadvantaged children and young people in Northumberland. This is fully consistent with the charity's objects. Accordingly, the sums raised for the charity from this redevelopment should provide additional means for financial and other support for the council in its provision of benefits for disadvantaged youngsters in Northumberland for many years to come. A proportion of the land owned by the charity is located amongst the existing houses, and whilst it is not suitable for redevelopment, it is of considerable amenity value to many of the residents, often being referred to as the Green. The trustees have agreed to transfer freehold ownership of this land free of cost to the Residents Association, simultaneously with the sale of the site for the proposed redevelopment that is subject to this application. Discussions with the Residents Association about the transfer of freehold ownership are well in hand through solicitors. The trustees believe that this considerable advantage to the residents will be facilitated through the approval of the reserved matters application and the sale of the redevelopment of the site. The trustees are grateful to the committee for considering these observations. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so do we have any questions for officers from any of the members? Anyone? No? No questions at all? Okay, we'll move on then to debate. So has anyone got a proposal to make on the motion, on the whether or not the application should be granted or not? Anybody? Oh, Councillor Dodd, Richard?
Yeah, I'll propose the officer recommendation to grant approval, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And is that proposal seconded? Okay, Councillor Jones has seconded that. Right, we have any speakers on that motion. So the motion is to accept the recommendation with the slight amendment that Jeff read out at the start of the presentation. So do we have any speakers on the motion? No? Okay, Councillor Dodd, then, do you want to sum up?
No, I think we've had a lot of full report and objectors and everything. I think there's a lot of information in there, so I'm quite happy that we
Okay, well, in that case, I suppose we move to the vote. Are we going to, Daniela, we're going to read out our names and we'll vote, is that?
Yep. Yes, please, Chair, yeah, I will do. I think it's just the 5 of you in the minute, so if you could let me know if you're voting for, against or abstaining. Councillor Bourne.
For.
Councillor Dodd.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
For.
And Councillor Sanderson.
For.
Thank you. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So that's carried. The rest of the recommendations are approved, subject to the amendment that Jeff outlined. Right. Well, that's into that item. So we can now invite those that have left to come back, reappear or rejoin. I'll just message those that have left the meeting. So Liz is back, Ian's back. So I'll hand the reins back to Liz, and then I will myself leave the meeting for the next item. So
thank you, Councillor Bourne, and thank you very much for chairing that particular application. Thank you. Bye. Okay, can I just check that we do have everyone back?
I think we're just waiting for Councillor Towns, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, I've actually just sent an email to Councillor Towns to ask him to rejoin. So I don't know whether you want to give him a couple of minutes to do so.
If we'll give him a minute or two, I'm sure that's fine with everybody?
The message, I think David Bourne's text from Chair, so I think it should just be a question of a few seconds.
Yeah.
Coming on. Thank you.
Yep, so we have Councillor Towns back now. Okay, if everyone's agreed, we'll move on to agenda item 7, which is application number 20-00303 FUL. And this is proposed 4 holiday chalets and a food takeaway unit with extended wildlife area. And it's the land southeast of the Drift, Cresswell, Northumberland. Ryan Salisbury is the planning officer for this. So if I can ask you to introduce it, Ryan, but if I can first just make sure that all members were able to view the videos that were sent out. Yeah, good. Okay, over to you, Ryan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen. All right. Right, just an update for members prior to the presentation. Conditions 16 and 17, as outlined on the officer report, have been addressed by the applicant in correspondence with the Coal Authority, and therefore these conditions no longer apply and are to be removed. The applicant has also provided additional information in relation to condition 15, which is for archaeological works to be undertaken. This information is still in consultation with our archaeology team, so it's requested that this condition be dealt with under delegated powers if the application were to be approved. A further objection has also been raised from a resident following publication of the report regarding the applicant actually starting works on site. So I'll just read out that objection now. The objection states, I've received notification today through the post that the planning committee date for this planning application is due to take place on the 8th of February with a recommendation for approval. Judging by the amount of infrastructure works already carried out on site, it would seem that the applicant has commenced with the project and preempted any final decision by the committee. Other works carried out on site are now being applied for via a retrospective application. It would be very easy to come to the conclusion that the village of Cresswell, the best way of achieving your goals RE development and building works is to get it built first and then seek approval from the planning department at a later date. I expect this application to be given very serious consideration regarding its suitability for the area, and that it should it be approved, that conditions are applied to prevent any further extensions or development in this location, including the retrospective application that is now in the planning system. So that was the representation or objection that was received following the officer report. In terms of the works that have been undertaken on site, it's in relation to a clearance of the site, an introduction of hard standing, and the introduction of services. No built form has been constructed on site following a site visit by myself last week. So into the presentation, planning permission is sought for the construction of 4-number holiday chalets and a food takeaway unit with an extended wildlife area on land southeast of the Drift, Cresswell. The application site is located to the north of the settlement of Cresswell and just south of the existing Drift Cafe. A public highway runs along the eastern boundary with agricultural fields bounding the site to the west. The site is situated adjacent to a designated cycle route and the coastal zone. The proposed timber chalets would be sited in a linear form against the western boundary of the site, with parking provision located to the front elevation of the units. The proposed wildlife area will be located upon the southern boundary and would incorporate a small pond and seating area with significant levels of planting. The proposed takeaway unit will be located closer to the existing build form of the Drift Cafe and will be timber clad in line with the proposed chalets. This slide shows elevations of the proposed takeaway unit, which mirrors the sloping roof that is to be incorporated on the chalets, therefore representing a degree of uniformity across the site. The photographs also show the site facing north beyond the grassed highway of Verge, and also when facing south beyond the existing Drift Cafe. These long-range images show the application site from wider viewpoints. The existing timber structure on the first image is for boat storage with this building setback from the dunes, whilst the existing Drift Cafe and application site can be partially seen in the distance, as can the settlement of Cresswell. And that's the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Ryan.
No problem.
We do have some representations for this application. And I think Jeff is going to read the first one, which is from Dr. P. Kirkwood. Is that right, Jeff?
No, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, yes, this is a representation against the proposed development from Dr. P.R. Kirkwood of the old schoolhouse in Creswell. Despite receiving 17 carefully considered valid objections made by local people, the case officer's report simply lists the nature of our concerns and then, without further comment, glibly states that 4 letters of support were received, welcoming the benefits the development could have, etc. In fact, only one of these solicited support letters was from a Creswell resident, and even he raised concerns about the current traffic issues resulting from the development as it currently operates. What about the inevitable detrimental effect on the character of the area and the potential consequences of the approval of this unwelcome proposal? ? If holiday chalets are accepted as envisaged, doesn't this set a precedent for the remainder of the village gardens strip, the full length of which is out with the settlement boundary? Reference CLC 1. Some of us have spent decades successfully fighting against such development. This can scarcely be construed to be democracy in action ? Such dismissive and shallow consideration of the real issues is totally unacceptable, and I would simply ask each voting councillor and the Chief Planning Officer, Director of Planning, to search their own conscience and take proper account of the many letters and photographic evidence submitted against this proposed development. I don't accept that the Planning Officer has given due cognizance to the various relevant CL policies, which should have protected the village against this particular proposal. Cresswell is at a crossroads in its evolution as a consequence of unwelcome development in recent decades, including the regrettable expansion of its intrusive caravan parks. And we, the residents, deserve the protection of the planning authority and the councillors we appoint to represent our interests. Do councillors and the planning authority really wish to see Creswell develop into something like sea houses? ? We don't need any increase in visitors, and swamped as we are by caravans and their occupants, it is well documented that our village can barely cope even with the present intrusions. Approval of this ill-conceived development could sound the death knell for Creswell, a point of no return. We, who have lived here for decades, certainly don't want our cherished village to be overdeveloped, but we have had to grit our teeth on so many recent occasions when the benefits to the few are put before the interests of the many. The claims about employment and tourism benefits are entirely subjective and unsubstantiated, and it is overwhelmingly clear that there is only one beneficiary if this application succeeds, namely the applicant himself. Some of the statutory consultees will be well aware from their own experience that many of their properly intentioned mitigation measures just won't be embraced once the development commences. We in Creswell have seen it all before. Consider the aftermath of the expansion of the Gordon Sands Holiday Park. The conditions of that approval were never implemented, and no serious attempt was made to impose them. As has so often been the case recently, our own parish council has failed to consult and express the wishes of the majority of residents, allowing itself rather to be swayed by the vociferous minority with their own self-interests. Their inept neutral stance robs us of a further voice against a proposal that is clearly not in our interests as parishioners. Finally, that leads me to the letter you received dated 28th of January by Mr. Ian Johnston, a resident of St. Bartholomew's Close, who, following the notification of the meeting, has advised the planning department that the applicant hasn't even waited for approval, but is already actively engaged on implementation. Indeed, the services for the 4 chalets are already visibly installed and the plot clearly prepared for building. This surely sends an unwelcome message to residents, planners and our councillors, who I hope will regard such flagrant abuse as unacceptable and act accordingly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jeff. We do have representation in support of this application, and that will be read by Leslie.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Duncan Lawrence, owner of the Drift Cafe. The cafe opened in March 2014 with no paid staff. The Drift has since become the biggest employer in the area with 28 staff. Profits continue to be invested in the business with the creation of more rural jobs. The proposed development is in line with the NPPF, Morpeth Local Plan and NCC Emerging Local Plan, supporting a prosperous rural economy, rural tourism and rural job opportunities. The development will be ancillary to the existing cafe business and as such should be supported. The scale of the development was reduced, and following consultation with senior planning officers, I was informed that the benefits of the application outweigh the harm, therefore should carry considerable weight. No consultees have objected, including Creswell Parish Council. Northumberland Tourism strongly support the application, recognising the value to the local economy. Although there are some objections, they are primarily concerned with parking issues along the verge adjoining the site. This will be addressed with conditions and instructions from highways. There will be a considerable parking net gain, therefore these objections should not be a material consideration and should carry no weight. Other objections relate to ecology. The project to create a new wildlife haven will enable natural processes to thrive across the site, increasing the abundance of birds and other wildlife, and will leave a long-lasting legacy. There will be a considerable ecological net gain, therefore these objections should not be a material consideration and should carry no weight. The development will include much needed free public toilets. There are currently no such facilities around the popular Council Boat Club car park. With the general increase in visitors to the region, this will be a significant benefit to the area and must be considered to be an important net gain. The region was previously an industrial coal mining area. The Drift Cafe building, built in 1930, was actually a drift coal mine, hence the name. The proposed development will be a fitting sustainable regeneration of the land. If the project is allowed to proceed, the benefits of the improved character of the area are clear. The benefits of the proposal are absolutely clear and robust. The development is about sustainable rural job opportunities and tourism. The project will create 20 permanent full-time equivalent new jobs. The Drift Cafe business has grown and thrived since opening in 2014. We know our market and we are certain of the accuracy of the expected employment figures for the project. The emerging tourism in the region needs quality 4-star accommodation and eating facility. The value of tourism overnight stays to the local economy is considerable. The proposal encourages sustainable travel such as cycling and walking. If there is considered to be any level of harm to the character of the area, it is clearly outweighed by the benefits of the proposed project. A case is easily made that there is no level of harm and that the character of the area will be visually improved with the addition of this coastal sensitive development. NCC Emerging Local Plan states 5.63, keeping the rural economy thriving presents one of the greatest challenges for this plan to address. 5.64, rural areas need to generate adequate wealth to support local services and more sustainable communities, part of the plan's vision. This means that the plan must seek to add to the diversity of job opportunities in rural areas for young people to access. 5.65, opportunities to enhance the skills of those living and working in rural areas of the county will be supported. Policy ECN 15, Northumberland will be promoted and developed as a destination for tourists and visitors. This will be achieved through the development of new visitor attractions and facilities, accommodation and the expansion of existing tourism businesses. The NPPF paragraph 83 supports a prosperous rural economy. Conclusion. The scheme is robust and would not lead to harm to the character of the area. It would not have an unacceptable impact on the amenity of neighbouring residents. The popular village of Cresswell is a good location for the provision of holiday accommodation on this scale due to the proximity of the beach and popular tourist destinations. Whilst increasing capacity for tourist accommodation in the local area would provide social and economic benefits to the local community, local businesses and local tourist attractions. Northumberland Tourism strongly support this application. The benefits clearly outweigh any considered harm as stated by NCC senior planning officers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leslie. That ends the public speaking, as it were. So at this point, I can ask members if they have any questions that they would like to put forward to officers. I don't see any hands. Can I just ask one, please? Where it makes reference to parking management strategy, can Ryan, could you explain that a bit more for me? Because I am aware of the problems of the parking down that area. So what is the management strategy? So
yeah, so that's a condition that's been requested by sort of our highways development management team to sort of prevent sort of parking on the verge. So what the applicant will be required to do is provide sort of a management strategy as to how sort of parking will be dealt with along the verge and along sort of further along towards sort of the dunes and things like that. And that can be something that we can secure sort of through approval of that condition, where we would then retain a level of control sort of over the parking within the area. So if there was any sort of breaches in terms of that in the future, that could be something that our planning enforcement team could enforce upon. I'm not sure if highways would want to add anything further on that, but yeah, that's what the management strategy would entail.
Thank you. Councillor Bainan.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was going to ask sort of a similar question to yourself. We know the problems along there where the sort of customers park, and I can understand what Ryan's saying, but would it not be better to have put in place some sort of car park first before the planning went ahead, rather than just sort of trying to manage it? Would it not be better to have a sort of a plan there? So this area is for parking, rather than just leave it to after the development is built? Yeah.
Well, in terms of the sort of the parking for the chalets, they actually do have sort of their separate on-site parking. There's two sort of vehicle parking spaces to the front of each chalet, sort of off the verge, sort of within the site curtilage. Our highways team have also requested upgrade works to the existing car park at the Drift Cafe, which is obviously going to be sort of utilised for visitors sort of using the cafe and sort of the takeaway facility. So they have requested upgrade works in terms of that, which they feel would sort of facilitate the parking for both sort of premises on the site.
Thank you. Does that, Councillor Bainan, you've still got your hand up. Do you have another question?
I've just put it back up the chair. Not really. What sort of numbers? Because there's going to be, obviously, we know that there's parking provided for the overnight accommodation, but with everything else being there, obviously there's going to be an increase in trade. So how many spaces are being provided in the car park? That's really the question. I can understand the local residents with the park on both sides of the road. So really, it's a question of how many spaces are going to be provided in the future.
That's something that we would be securing and sort of assessing under condition sort of 7 of the planning approval, which sort of states that the chalets shall not be occupied until the car parking area associated with the chalets, as indicated on the approved plans, has been marked out in the bays and implemented in accordance with the approved plans. And condition 6 also relates to parking as well, stating that the takeaway unit shall not be brought into use until the car parking area associated with the takeaway unit indicated on the approved plans has been marked out in accordance. In terms of sort of the numbers of the existing car park, I'm not entirely sure of sort of how many bays are provided, but there is upgrade works that are required to the existing car park as well, which gives us then sort of an opportunity to assess under discharge of that condition, which will ultimately go through sort of our highways team in terms of the parking provision. I'm not sure if highways want to add anything extra in terms of that, or.
Yeah, please, I would like to hear something more on that.
I think I've got, is this Matthew coming in?
Yeah. In terms of the number of parking spaces required, we've been assessed them against the parking standards, and the existing Drift Cafe car park to the sort of the north of the building itself is sufficient to accommodate the number of spaces required for both the existing and the future takeaway use. The chalets obviously will have their own dedicated parking on the south side of the building, again in accordance with the standards. In terms of the parking management strategy, that also includes provision for sort of on-street restrictions that will be considered as part of their submission to that. So in planning terms, they've provided sufficient parking for the land uses that are on that site as a whole, and therefore that's why the conditions that we recommended are there in place. And by formalising the existing Drift Cafe car park, you'll be able to utilise those spaces more efficiently as well, the space within the car park.
Thank you. Councillor Dodd.
Yeah, I was interested when it said about the public toilets or use of toilets. Can that be expanded? We as a council seem to spend quite a lot of money and time debating toilets in these touristy hotspots. Are these toilets open to the public? I'm just asking an easy question, I think.
There's nothing proposed in terms of this application in terms of a public toilet facility. Of course, each of the chalets will obviously have sort of their own sort of facilities, but there's nothing sort of proposed as part of this one in terms of public toilet facilities.
I thought there was something mentioned in the supporters representation.
Yes, I heard that, Liz. That's why I'm asking.
Certainly nothing proposed as part of this application. No, there's sort of existing sort of toilet facilities within the settlement of Cresswell. I'd have to have a look into that further.
Liz?
Yeah. Chair, I was just going to add, it may well have been mentioned by the public speaker, but it's not something that we have assessed as part of this application. So members are making your decision on the assumption that there is no public toilet access, save for those users of the facilities there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Can't see any. The recommendation is that this application be granted, but at this point, can I ask members if they have a proposal to put forward, either to support that or otherwise? Councillor Dodd.
Propose the recommendation.
Do we have a seconder for that, please? That's Councillor Jackson. Okay, we can go into debate. Councillor, sorry,
Chair. Can I just clarify the recommendation with Ryan? Because I know there was a reference at the beginning about delegated authority on one of the conditions. So I just want to clarify that so we're all clear if possible.
Yeah, so it was conditions 16 and 17 on the officer report to be removed. They've been addressed, and condition 15 to be dealt with under delegated powers in terms of archaeological investigation.
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan. And as the proposer,
is that still okay with you? Councillor Dodd? Okay, all right, we can go into debate at this point. No?
Shall I sum up?
Yes, feel free.
We've had this ongoing debate, and I think even the local member who's not present tonight wanted to be included in, you know, the coastal strip sort of group that, you know, are experiencing problems. I'm happy to think that this is a benefit to the local business. Businesses are struggling, especially the hospitality, and someone's prepared to invest in, you know, their own money in the, you know, in this business that is struggling. Let's face it, we don't know where the end of the tunnel is. So I'm quite happy that someone takes the opportunity in this downtime to invest in Northumberland. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dodd. Okay, the recommendation is that this application be granted subject to the amendments which were put forward before about conditions 16 and 17 and 15. That has been moved and seconded, and there's no further debate. So can I ask Danielle if you want to go forward to the vote?
Yes, Chair. Just to clarify, it's also subject to the 106 agreement as well, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. On that basis, I'll go through everyone. If you can unmute and let me know if you're for, against or abstaining for the proposal to grant. Councillor Armstrong.
For.
Councillor Bainan.
For.
Councillor Dodd.
For.
Councillor Dunn.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Sanderson.
Agreed.
Sorry, was that for? Sorry.
Sorry, it was, yes. For.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Towns.
For.
Thank you. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. That permission is therefore granted. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 8. And this is application 20-03738.
Chair, I've just messaged Councillor Bourne. I don't know if.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, he's here.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Welcome back. Okay, so this application is 20-03738, very cool. And this is East Farm Cottage Guidepost, Choppington. Richard Lawton is the officer who will present this application. Can I just make sure that members have been able to view the relevant videos? Yep. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Can I just confirm that you can see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just a quick update to highlight an error in paragraph 2.9 and condition of the report. It's just to correct the site plan reference number, which is 300-02 revision 7. So it's not revision 5 or 6. Just to introduce the application, it's to vary condition 2 to amend the site plan in order to provide the 5 spaces for parking in the same location without removing a section of the front boundary wall. This is an amendment required due to previous ownership issues, or sorry, current ownership issues with the front wall. The amended plans also seek to reposition the rear shed within the garden. The application is also seeking to vary condition 7. This is to increase the catchment area to Tynemere and Durham County Council authorities if children cannot be drawn from the Northumberland County Council area. Just a quick background, that application was allowed at appeal in August 2020 after being refused by members of the committee in February 2020. There are no restrictions to amend the condition imposed by the Planning Inspectorate under planning legislation. The proposal has previously been to committee on 2 occasions and subject to a member site visit, but I'll provide a quick recap. The change of use of the housing of the existing house will provide care for 3 vulnerable children within 24-hour care and a maximum of 5 members of staff during shift changes. The property is within an existing residential area on the eastern boundary of Guidepost to the south of the A196. The application site is the only building to the west of the private road and to the site with adjacent properties to the east and the fields of the surrounding working farm to the south and the west. The existing property was previously 2 cottages converted into 1 larger dwelling with a rear garden facing the west opposite farmland and with a large timber cabin to the north near a gravelled area for parking. The proposed plans show the timber cabin will now be repositioned to the west of the property and the 5 parking spaces can still be provided without removing a small section of the front boundary wall. The existing and proposed elevations show the garage door will be replaced with a window and a timber gate to the entrance door. So let's go back again. And there will be minimal internal alterations and the conversion of the garage into a quiet room and office. The property will retain 4 bedrooms, serving 1 each for 3 children and a member of staff for overnight stay. This photograph shows the access along the A196 and the private road into the site with the application site in the distance. The photograph shows the building on the private road and the proximity to the adjacent neighbours. This photograph shows the property and the existing area of parking that will be extended into the rear garden without the removal of a small section of the wall. This just shows again the front elevation, the garden. The existing brick wall will be extended onto the entrance door with a gate and path behind. And the additional photo shows the rear garden where the shed will be positioned. So to conclude, in relation to condition 2, there are no objections from Highway Development Management as the site can accommodate the required parking on site. In relation to condition 7, the officer report has provided quite a detailed account of residents' concerns and comments from Northumberland Police. It is considered on balance that there will be no further intensification of the site by extending the catchment area, and conditions will still be imposed to restrict the use to 3 children and no emergency placements can be accepted. The application is therefore recommended for approval. Okay, that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, we do have public speaking representation, and objector Mr. Bill Sanderson and Ryan will be reading this out.
Yes. Chair, on behalf of East Farm Park residents, thank you for this opportunity. This is not a fancy speech written by an expert full of legal jargon and planning references, but by these residents. We take this opportunity to share our concerns with you as it continues to blight our small community. The original application, after 1 referral, was then refused planning permission by yourselves, but an appeal overturned this decision. Condition 7 of the appeal decision states the premises shall only be used as a residential care home for children, with a maximum of 3 children in residence at any one time, who shall be from the Northumberland County Council area and shall be no older than 12 years when first placed in care at the premises and for no other purpose. Appeal decision conditions paragraph 27 includes the following. Although the appellant sought to allow some flexibility in the region from where the children would have formerly resided, I find their suggested wording to be imprecise and unenforceable. In any case, based on the evidence of the designing out crime officer, I consider that it is important to the operation of the site that children are not remote from family and friends and are from the local area. These conditions are necessary to minimise the intensity of the use and protect the amenity of neighbours. The planning inspector included these important conditions to reduce the risk of disturbance to neighbouring amenity and to safeguard the well-being of children placed at the home. One of our major concerns centres on the potential disruption that will result from missing children and the effect on local support services. These children will have a variety of social needs and they need to be comfortable in their surroundings. By moving them to this rural location can only increase their anxiety. Whilst we were notified of the new planning application, we contacted the planning inspectorate, who stated we would expect local planning authorities to respect the decision of the planning inspector. We were astounded when the application was recommended for approval, as it not only goes against the decision of the planning inspector, it also brings into question the failure to recognise national best practice of children in care. We have thoroughly researched the subject and copies of the relevant documents have been posted on the planning portal. AFC are requesting wording changes in the conditions and flexibility to draw from a wider region. If relevance is to be given to their proposal, it is clear this request has nothing to do with children, but to maximise profit realised by increasing the catchment area. AFC have admitted they are a fee-based organisation and are using the planning system to maximise income, which goes against what their primary aim should be, to safeguard children. NCC are building 2 new children's care homes, and from a freedom of information request, there will be ample capacity for the county's needs. Therefore, we question why this home is needed, especially if children need to be transported in from other counties to make it viable. Surely this is setting a new precedent that only planning inspector can respond to. Over the past 18 months, we have attempted to reach out and build bridges with officers from AFC by adopting an open and honest approach, but relationships between AFC and local residents are broken. Dialogue has again stopped, leaving us with an uncertain future that is manifested in a combination of anger, confusion and fear. AFC have refused to give accurate information on what type of home they propose to open. Is this for A, children at risk from being left in their family situation, or B, children out of control where families can no longer cope? AFC have used incorrect information in their applications. AFC have changed wording during applications, e.g. emotional and behavioural children to vulnerable children. AFC have misled the residents of East Farm Park with conflicting communications, and AFC have intimidated some residents of East Farm Park. It is clear that we find ourselves in an East Farm Park versus Action for Children situation. A toxic and unhealthy situation is developing, a situation that Ofsted will take a very grim view of. We urge you to look at the vast amount of evidence presented to you and in the interests of everyone to support the planning inspector's appeal decision in its entirety, refusing any changes to a catchment area outside the Northumberland County Council boundaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. That brings the public speaking part of this application to an end. So now we can ask members if they have any questions they want to put to officers. And I've got Councillor Bainan.
Thanks, Chair. It might be me being slow. On the looking at the building from the roadside, where the proposed car parking spaces, is that the space to the right of the building?
Yes, it is, yeah. There's already a current provision for parking there, but this is going to be extended further into the garden.
So the same position will be that the cars will be blocked in, so you can't drive in and have 5 spaces.
Yeah, I mean, that's right, yes. This was actually, the layout is the same as the previous approval. It's just the fact that the wall is now not going to be removed. So in terms of, yeah, as I say, the layout's the same and highways have no concerns with the parking sort of layout.
I thought part of the wall was owned by a different owner and they were not prepared for the wall to be removed, or any part of the wall to be removed.
Yes, that's what the proposal is, to not remove the wall, yeah.
So it's going to be double parked.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Bourne.
Thank you, Chair. Just some clarity on, obviously there's 2 changes proposed, one to do with the physical layout and one to do with the changing of the catchment area. Now, can you just confirm, do we have to take those en masse and either approve them both or refuse them both? or are we able to approve one and not the other?
Yeah, we have to approve the application, and we can't refuse one and approve the other. It's a variation of the permission, so it's basically like a new permission. So if you have an issue with one condition, then that would probably be a refusal or approval, depending on which way you want to go. But yeah, you could be satisfied with one condition but not another. And yeah, if Liz wants to carry on, we'll extend that.
Yeah, Chair, just to add to that, you could, members, you could potentially vary the wording of the conditions, but what we can't, where we can't go is issue a hybrid decision, which is, I think, what you're asking, Councillor Vaughan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Dodd?
I'm just curious to why this is here. I mean, I've looked at the objector, neighbours notified 25, objectors 6. I mean, these conditions in the wall are minor. I drove past there about two or 3 weeks ago, and there was a mini digger in there because we had a site investigation. So I was interested because I looked when I went past. I mean, has the work been done, or I just wonder why this is here when can someone answer that? Thank you.
Liz?
Sorry.
Yeah,
I think Liz was wanting to come in here.
No, well, I was just going to support Richard on this to explain that the applications go through our virtual delegation scheme. And part of the, consideration of this would have been the history of the application site, with it having, had a lot of interest at the first application, and indeed the application was refused by this committee, which was then granted on appeal. So this is a variation to the conditioning, given that wider public interest. The director, along with the chairs, have agreed that it should be determined at planning committee.
Did Richard want to say anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say that if this application is refused, they can still implement their original permission. So if they are doing works, they still have that permission to do so. This is just obviously to amend some of the conditions.
Right. Can I just ask for clarification on one thing, Liz, and that's around the planning inspector's decision? We are able to change that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we always take a lot of guidance and put a lot of weight on a planning inspector's decision, members, as you know. But what's important here is that any conditions that they might add to consent isn't sacrosanct, provided with good reason that an applicant can come forward and vary things, and we've got to approach it with an open mind. So yes, just because it was a condition on the previous consent, the applicants come in, we have consulted, and we've got the additional views of the relevant consultees. And that has left us in a position where we have, we think that the request to amend that condition is acceptable.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, can I ask if anybody has a proposal to put forward? Councillor Bainan?
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I would like to propose that we refuse this application. It's still in the totally wrong location, and I disagree entirely with bringing children in from outside of the county.
Okay, I would need a seconder for that. Councillor Towns?
Yes, I'll second that. I'm glad Councillor Vaughan asked the question he did, because it's something I had in mind. I think actually the parking side of things actually addresses an issue which is useful to see, but I see no reason to challenge the planning inspector's view on this. It's quite clear at para 7.12 of our report on page 68 what the planning inspector's reasons for putting that condition on were, and I support that condition, and I think this committee should do the same. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Bainan, you still have an electronic hand up. Is that just from before? Thank you. Okay, Councillor Bainan has proposed that this application is refused, and it has been seconded. So can we go into debate, please? Elizabeth, Liz? You're on mute.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear of the reasons for the refusal from Councillor Bennon and Councillor Towns, because they're slightly different, and I think it's important that we get those reasons right. So is it the case that you just want to continue with the imposition of the inspector's condition, or are you opening and revisiting the fear of crime aspect that I do think the inspector did deal with in the first decision, and did come to the conclusion that there was no fear of crime. But what the inspector did do was further in his analysis of the application, and to alleviate any doubt about the catchment area, put a catchment area on. I think that's important that we understand the difference.
Councillor Towns.
If Councillor Bainan will allow me, I've mentioned paragraph 712 of the report. That is quoting the planning inspector, and he says, although the appellant sought to allow some flexibility in the region from where the children would have formerly resided, I find their suggested wording to be imprecise and unenforceable. And this is the important bit. In any case, based on the evidence of the designing out crime officer, I consider it is important to the operation of the site that children are not remote from family and friends and are from the local area. These conditions are necessary to minimise the intensity of the use and protect the amenity of neighbours. I think that sums up my position on this pretty neatly. And if Councillor Bainan takes the same view, then I think we have our reason.
Okay, Councillor Bainan does have his hand raised.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm more than happy to change my proposal to what Councillor Towns has just said. Could I ask Liz that I'm also against the parking regime that is going to be there. It's a busy road there with farm vehicles going backwards and forwards, and if people are going to be blocked in, I can see them parking on the road and not using it. But I don't know if we can put that in as well, or it just has to be Councillor Towns's wording.
So I think just to capture the reasons for refusal here, and looking at paragraph 712, I think your reasons are that their proposed wording regarding the region is imprecise and unenforceable as reason one, and secondly, based on the evidence of the designing out crime officer, children are not remote from family and friends as your reason two. And then I think Councillor Bainan, what you're saying is your reason three is that you don't accept the car parking proposals because of highway safety.
Councillor Bourne has a hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. This has always been a difficult one. I do remember this coming to us a couple of times, and we've looked at it in quite a lot of detail. Like I said, this is two parts, and we can't take them separately. But I think certainly the bit about the highway safety, if it was just that, I would say I would have to support granting permission, because although we have concerns, because I think that's defensible, and again we'd lose on appeal. However, the catchment area, I think, is a very pertinent point. I think that the planning inspector said these should be local children, and that was certainly the original idea behind this facility. And the applicants has chosen to bring these two matters together, and therefore, because they've chosen to do so, my view is I would support the proposal as written. Like I said, I'm not so sure about number three, but number one and two, I think are perfectly defensible and sensible.
Can I just bring Liz back in here? Liz, can you just explain for me the bit about the parking? And I'm a bit wary that we're sort of debating this before we've actually proposed and seconded it. So I just want to get the proposal very
Yes,
clear?
I think we need to get the proposal right,
Yes.
and I want to give you
Good.
members a little bit of guidance on your 3 reasons for your proposal. So on the highway safety, Chair. Yeah. So, well, first of all, what we need to understand is Councillor Bainan does have highway safety concerns, but you must remember that this is an improvement to the car parking situation from the first application. And in the first application, the inspector had no concerns relating to highway safety. So I'd really strongly caution you not to use that as a reason for refusal, Councillor Bainan and Councillor Towns, because as I say, this current layout is an improvement to the situation where they've moved in, taken a little bit more of the garden. So I would like you to have a think about that. And the other aspect of the reason for refusal is saying that the wording of the area was imprecise and unenforceable. I think different to the first application, and Richard will help me here, I don't think there was a precise catchment area. We do have that now in this in this application. And that's the difference. So I think this time round, they have been really clear what the catchment area is going to be. We know from our designing and crime officer at Northumbria Police, they have accepted that as being, and including Durham, part of the Tyne and Wear region, and they find that that's acceptable. So really that takes us down to the one reason for refusal, which is that children shouldn't be remote from their home. And I think that reason on its own is still a strong reason. And I would urge members to go with one strong reason, then try to bolster your argument with 2 other reasons that I think are less strong. Certainly your highways one isn't one that I would recommend that you pursue, and the fact that they are being really precise about the area, the catchment area here, and that's been supported by the police. Again, I think that's probably a very weak reason. So it's back to you, Councillor Bainan and Towns, to tell me, you know, where you are with your reasons for refusal now on that advice.
Right, Councillor Bainan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Liz. I'm more than happy to take out my part on the parking issue. I don't want to complicate things, and I'd rather just go with one strong argument.
So that being that children mustn't be remote from their homes. Something like that. Children are not remote from family and friends, and are from the local area.
If I may, as I think when I first spoke on this, I said the important bit to me was the planning inspector said, I consider it's important to the operation of the site that children are not remote from family and friends and are from the local area. Yeah. These conditions are necessary to minimise the intensity of the use and protect the amenity of neighbours. I think that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
In this one objection, I agree that we shouldn't just try and lump in as much as possible. I think that is literally quoting the planning inspector's report.
Fine.
And that's what I consider to be the reason for our objection.
Okay, I can see Councillor Bainan giving the thumbs up to that. So Liz, can I just ask you to read that out so we know exactly what the proposal is before we debate it?
The proposal from Councillor Bainan, seconded by Councillor Towns, is that that it is important to the operation of the site that children are not remote from family and friends and are from the local area. This is necessary to minimise the intensity of the use and protect the amenity of the neighbours. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So that has been proposed and seconded. So can we now go into debate? Councillor Dodd.
It's more of a question. What is defined as local? Is it local Northumberland, or is it local northeast? Because you know this is near to a boundary with Tyneside, Newcastle, and Berwick, Haltwhistle are a long way away from here. I'm seeking clarification here on this one point. We could get into a lot of trouble on this, because as a county council, I'm sure that we send children from our county to other areas for whatever I'm just asking that question. Can I have some clarification? Thank you.
Yeah. So I think, Councillor Dodd, that's well set out by Richard in paragraph 720 in the report, where, you know, it's noting that some areas in Tyne and Wear and Durham may be closer to this application site than some areas in Northumberland. Tyne and Wear, by our crime officer who's looked at this, they consider that to be local, and we have had no comments or concerns about the catchment area that's being proposed as local from either the police, public protection, or children's services in Northumberland. That's why we have come to a conclusion that it's a recommendation for approval, because we still deem the catchment area to be local.
Can I just ask, Liz, if this is refused as such, then the application goes back to the original bit of the parking, because that was an application that's been passed already?
Mm-hmm. That's correct. They can
so
implement that.
We would revert to the original plan for the parking, and we're back to the small bit of wall that was the contentious issue?
Yeah.
Any other questions or any other comments? Councillor Bourne.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad that we've now sort of clarified the objection. I think it's clear that there is a very simple reason to object to this application, and that's based on Councillor Towns's proposal. As I said before, you know, they brought these two things together. I mean, if this is refused, presumably they can come back with the parking plan separately, or try and appeal the whole thing, or whatever they want to do. But you know, we can only look at what's in front of us, and what's in front of us as a package includes something that is clearly contrary to the planning inspector's decision, in that children should not be brought in for their brought in from wider areas. And I think the planning inspector identified that was for two reasons: one, for the benefit of the children themselves, not to be isolated, but secondly, for the benefit of local residents and community, because that the catchment area affects the use of the site. The bigger the catchment, the more full it will be, and more often it will be full. And this planning inspector did recognise that in his report. So I would fully support the refusal on the grounds Councillor Town set out. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? No, I can't see any. So I think if we're ready, we could go to the vote on this one.
Thank you, Chair. So just to clarify, that's a recommendation for refusal for the reason that Liz read out earlier, so that it was important to the operation of the site that children are not remote from family and friends and are from the local area, and this is necessary to minimise the intensity of the use and protect the amenity of neighbours. So if you could let me know if you're voting for, against or abstaining on that motion. Councillor Armstrong.
Against.
Councillor Bourne.
If I say for, I mean for the motion to refuse.
Yes, yes,
so
right.
For. Yeah.
Councillor Bainan.
I'm for the motion.
Councillor Dodd.
Against.
Councillor Dunn.
Against.
Councillor Jackson.
For the motion.
Councillor Jones.
Against.
Councillor Sanderson.
Against.
Sorry, apologies, Councillor Sanderson. Just repeat that.
Against.
Against. Thank you. Councillor Towns.
For.
That's four for the motion, 5 against the motion, Chair.
Okay, so that motion is not carried. I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Sorry, Chair. So that motion has fallen. So we need another motion.
Okay. Do we have a proposal for another motion? I will go forward and say that I propose that we accept the recommendation of the officer. But I would need a seconder for it. Councillor Dodd? Okay, so it has been proposed that the application is granted subject to the officer's report, and it has been seconded. We can go into a debate about that now. Okay, well, Councillor Towns?
Well, I mean, it's not really worth it, to be fair. But I would just remind colleagues that, you know, the planning inspector themselves, and as Councillor Bourne highlighted, said that the condition was necessary to minimise the intensity of use and to protect the amenity of neighbours. And I think we have a duty to consider the neighbours. We heard some very impassioned arguments from them last year, which most of us found persuasive. And clearly the planning inspector has looked at this in, no offence to anybody on this committee, but probably in a lot more detail than any of us have, and reached this conclusion. So I think it's odd that we should be trying to say that the planning inspector is wrong, but that's just a comment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Towns. Okay, Councillor Bainan?
Yeah, Chair, Councillor Towns has basically said what I was going to say. We're going against the planning inspector, and I think, you know, we have to take into account the local residents who are part of our community, and their very impassioned speeches at the last planning.
Thank you, Councillor Bainan. Well, as soon as I put the proposal forward, I'll go to closing arguments. Firstly, I would just like to sort of reiterate that we can, you know, take the inspector's recommendations and change them if that's what we think is right. Secondly, with proposals to the catchment area, I have sympathy that some of these places are not as far as other places in outlying areas of Northumberland. And I'm just acutely aware that this is only 3 placements. And that is my thing, that I think the 3 placements are manageable, and that they could be managed and hopefully managed to suit the occupants of the houses nearby as well. So I have proposed that, and it has been seconded. Can we go to a vote, Danielle?
Yes, Chair. So just repeat that. So vote to grant the application in accordance with your officer recommendation. Councillor Armstrong.
For.
Councillor Bourne.
Against.
Councillor Bainan.
Against.
Councillor Dodd.
For.
Councillor Dunn.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
Against.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Sanderson.
For.
Councillor Towns.
Against.
So that's 5 for and 4 against, Chair. So that's granted.
Thank you. Just to clarify that that application has been granted. So that does bring the planning applications to a close. Thank you, everyone. If I can just move on to item 9 now on the agenda. I'm sorry, I've lost everyone off my screen for a minute. Bear with me. Yeah, I'm back. Item 9, members have received the appeals update report, which is on page 75 of the pack. And unless there are any questions, are members happy just to note acceptance of the report for the purposes of this meeting? Yep, okay, that's fine. And at this point, I think that brings the planning business to a close, and I'll hand over now to Councillor Armstrong, who will take the meeting forward from item 10.
Thank you, Councillor Dunn. Members will be taking a 5-minute break. This is for Leslie in order for her to contact officers. With that in mind, Luke, could I ask you to stop recording, and I'll see everybody back here in 5.
Yeah, it's back up now.
Thank you. Well, welcome back, everyone. We have a one agenda item, the local transport plan, which I believe Paul Jones is going to speak on.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd just like to briefly present the LTP, the draft LTP proposals for 21-22. So this covers the council's capital investment in its highway network. Also within the report is the further £5 million, which represents the second year of the £15 million programme of activity being funded directly by the county council itself to improve the maintenance and much needed maintenance of our rural U and C roads, and also footways in and across the county as well. So it's a two-pronged approach with two programmes of activity. The LTP itself is just over £19 million worth of investment, so I'm sure you all welcome the level of investment that's been made to help tackle the issues within the highway network in Northumberland. The programme's been developed following the dialogue with the town and parish councils, where we always ask for their priorities, and also with local members and asking their priorities. And we've tried to shape the programme based on that as much as possible. So we're trying to meet as many of those priorities in terms of the key aspirations from your good selves as local members, and also from the town and parish councils. And what I would always say is, despite that, there's always more priorities than there is funding. So we have to prioritise that. We have to consider the overall highway network and what really offers the most improvement and benefit for transport users as a whole. So that's pedestrian, cyclists, as well as road users. You'll see from the appendix, the LTP split against 4 separate categories of investment area. So there's walking and cycling, safety issues, road maintenance and improvement schemes, and then bridges, structures and landslips. What I would like to do, rather than going through all the detail, just really to highlight, because you've obviously had the opportunity to read through the report, is just to highlight some of the key elements in terms of the different programmes, just to pick out some of the great things that we're looking to put forward. So on the walking and cycling, what I would say is that we are looking to spend just over £1.5 million on improvements for walking and cycling across the county. These basically make it easier and encourage more people to modal shift, to take up walking and cycling, particularly for short journeys. And that's good for obviously their health, but also supports our climate change aspirations. So it's a really positive programme. I would also highlight that there's a further £3 million proposed within the council's medium-term financial plan, specifically to support the development of the local cycling walking investment plans that are a separate activity that's also going forward. And that's really looking at the key networks for walking and cycling in the main towns and how we can take those forward and improve and invest in those going forward. On the safety schemes, there's just over £2 million allocated on safety schemes, and that represents increased level of funding, particularly on the high risk sites where we've maintained a higher level of funding than in previous years to tackle some of those areas where there are ongoing accidents and where we're getting information through from the police in terms of people basically injuring themselves at some of those more dangerous locations. We also are obviously looking to continue and to complete the 20-mile-an-hour limits around schools as part of that overall programme. And within this year's programme, you'll see that there's a £350,000 allocation specifically for the refurbishment and renewal of signage and road markings, which is something that both members generally and also the town and parish councils have been raising for a while now. That they want to see that investment in some of that infrastructure, and this is a specific allocation to support a programme of activity to do that county-wide. As I'm sure you're well aware, the roads is the biggest slug of funding that we're looking at just over £12 million in the LTP. That's because the road network consists of is the largest part of our asset base, and we need to ensure that we're maintaining that to address the structural decline that happens with any asset over time. Within that, though, what I would like to really highlight is the £750,000 allocation specifically for drainage works. As I'm sure you'll have seen over the last few days, that drainage and the ability to ensure that the road network is free of standing water is increasingly important in the weather systems we seem to be getting at the moment. And the investment we've already made in relation to that in the current year really has borne fruit over the past few weeks, where some of those really low-lying prone areas that have caused problems for many years
haven't been anywhere near as bad despite all the weather. There are still plenty of other areas that do need further work, and this is what we'll be targeting with that investment going forward. I won't really go much into the detail on the bridges, structures and landslip section, just to say that it does just build on our bridge strengthening works that's ongoing, that we are looking to try and stabilise those areas of landslips and protect them to basically look future plan and avoid further deterioration, because clearly if you lose the landslip part of the network, the costs associated with bringing that back into a functioning part of the highway is far more significant than trying to tackle it up front and preventing that in the first place. We are planning to do further works in terms of design and work at the Todsteads area along the Rothbury Road, and we envisage that once we've got that detailed work, we'll be able to pull forward a more detailed package of works and a detailed bid for that, because that would be certainly more than the funding that's allocated at this point in time. The other thing in terms of the 5 million investment on the UNC roads is really just to highlight that that is really welcomed investment from the County Council to take forward, particularly I think some of those residential areas and the footway refurbishments, because that's activity that in residential areas doesn't often get the level of priority because of the level of footfall, but clearly does get a lot of member input in terms of complaints from members of the public that want to see those areas improved. And it's something that's really, I think, been beneficial in the current year that we've been able to tackle that. And obviously we'll be looking to tackle the worst areas of paving and footway that we've identified as part of the programme going forward. So the next steps for the process is obviously to get the feedback through the local area councils. So that's why we're here tonight, to present to yourselves and to hear your views, to help shape and comment on the proposed programme before that's then taken forward as a delegated decision to finalise the programme, and we can crack on and start implementing the works from 1st of April going forward. So really over to your good selves. Neil and Dale have come along tonight to help answer any detailed questions in terms of schemes and the rationalisation of the programme. I'm more than happy to consider that and listen to what you've got to say tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, it's open to members. Any comments or questions, please? Leslie, I can't see everyone. Do you see any hands up?
No, Chair, not sure. Councillor Towns, did you have your hand up there? No, I can't see anybody with their hands up, Chair. Oh, Councillor Jackson.
Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, just very quickly, I think the unrelenting rain of the last 2 or 3 months has just shown how important our roads are in Northumberland, and it's not just the main roads, as Mr. Jones has said. It's all of the side roads, it's the access onto the main roads, and in particular, it's the footways and the estate roads where so many people are actually now taking their exercise on a daily basis. So it's just so important in Northumberland that we do maintain our roads and we gradually improve them year on year. And we're doing that even in the face of extreme weather. And you know, just driving around as I do my work, the number of potholes had declined dramatically, but in the last couple of weeks with the bad weather, it's got a lot worse. So more than ever, we've just got to keep on investing in our road system in Northumberland. And I'd like to thank the team in highways generally for doing such a great job in the last 2 or 3 years, because it is better, but there are still huge challenges, and as a council we're rising to those challenges.
Thank you. Sorry, David Bourne, did you put your hand up there? No.
Councillor Dunn has her hand up, Chair.
Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Can I just go back to Paul when he mentioned drainage and the funding that was going into that? Can I ask how do you decide which areas will warrant investment, sort of thing?
Paul's just disconnected. I think he was trying to sort out an IT issue. I'm sure he'll be back, but maybe one of his colleagues can respond.
A question?
He's
Has Paul rejoined us?
Yes.
Sorry, I seemed to get kicked out then. I couldn't hear what Councillor Jackson was saying. So apologies for that IT issue.
Shall I ask the question again, Eileen?
Yes, I think we better.
Sorry. I was just coming back to you, Paul, when you mentioned drainage. And just a general sort of question, how do you decide which areas warrant sort of investment from that pot?
So that's on the back of the feedback we have from both, obviously, your good selves in terms of raising issues and concerns, but also from the highway inspectors and the asset management approach that we take. So we know where we're having issues from the feedback we receive from local residents, from your good selves, and also from our own inspection of the network and understanding of the network. And we prioritise that in terms of where we think the biggest issues are and what would offer the best return on the investment.
And will we get to know that before it goes ahead, or?
The scheme itself is based really just on the needs. We wouldn't go into individual scheme detail. It's basically just shared out amongst the area highway managers to look at that programme and to take that forward as the area managers themselves. Right. Similar to what we do with the structural patching type works, where it's smaller scale activity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions for the officers?
Councillors Towns and Councillor Jackson have their hands up, Chair.
Councillor Towns first, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just two things, well, a couple of points really. I'm pleased to note the proposed works in my own patch. I think that's great, and it's a further boost for the semi-rural and rural areas, which is great. I'd also just add, I was made aware recently of some councillors, and I don't think any who were sitting on in this meeting necessarily this applies to, but some councillors who are sitting on enormous amounts of small schemes funding that they're either rolling over. They might be doing that for a reason, but actually one good thing to do is when you see there are LTP schemes in your area, speak to the relevant officers and say, can we do a little bit more and we can put a bit of extra funding in. I've just done that recently in Pegswood. We had under this scheme this scheme last year, the extra 15 million, 45 grand allocated for some works on some pavements in Pegswood. And I spoke to Martin and said, could we extend those works? I've got a little spare in my member scheme, and he's managed to extend those works. And actually get a bit of extra money from highways into it too. So try and push this and try and do a bit more. And as I say, I'm aware of some councillors who are sitting on enormous fortunes, and I'm not sure what they're planning to do with them. But helping get the roads and pavements fixed would be a nice idea. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson, please.
Just very quickly, just because Mr. Jones lost the signal before, I was actually complimenting him and his team on doing such a good job and on the major investments that the county council is making into the roads. And I'll make one specific comment that I've noticed is the micro surface dressing program seems to make a real difference, and it seems to be a very effective and cheap way of covering a lot of square meters, but actually sealing the surface and keeping that water and the frost out of the fabric of the road. And from my point of view, in the rural areas, that's been a real success of the council. So you might want to comment on that.
I wouldn't. It is something that as a programme of activity we have developed that further, and it's more widely used now. As you say, it fundamentally helps to seal the surface, which then prevents the water ingress, which during cold spells like we're experiencing at the moment is really essential in preventing the breakup of the road surface. So it's a really excellent way of getting a lot of investment for you, or improvement for your money, basically, on your investment. And certainly where there are schemes we can do that, we do push and incorporate them in the programme. The only problem is it's seasonal and it's weather dependent. So we can't do it all year round. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? I can't see anyone. Well, can I thank you, Paul, Deal and Neil, for joining us, and a big thank you for all you do. I'm sure I'll speak on behalf of us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and apologies for the IT issues. It's terrible to miss out on getting compliments for a change, so thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Right, we go on to agenda item 11, which is to note the date of the next meeting, which is the 8th of March, and again at 4 o'clock. There's no urgent business, so I will close the meeting now. Thank you all. Thank you, Luke.